The Riverside Country Club's main ballroom sparkled with 30 years of memories captured in photo displays and elegant floral arrangements. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables draped in ivory linens, where 60 guests had gathered to celebrate Mom and Dad's pearl anniversary. The evening represented everything my parents valued: tradition, family achievement, and the kind of milestone celebration that reflected a life well lived. I stood near the champagne fountain at 7:15 p.m., watching Dad work the room with practiced ease. At 58, he still commanded attention when he entered a space, still had that engineering project manager's way of making everyone feel included in something important. Mom floated beside him in her silver gown, radiant with the kind of happiness that comes from having exactly the celebration you've always dreamed about. The guest list read like a catalog of their social and professional network: colleagues from Dad's firm, Mom's book club friends, neighbors from their subdivision, and extended family who'd traveled from 3 states to be here tonight. Everyone dressed in their finest clothes, ready to toast 3 decades of marriage and the successful family they'd built together. My phone buzzed in my clutch purse, but I ignored it. Tonight was about Mom and Dad. Alexandra. Mom appeared beside me, glowing with anniversary bliss. Doesn't everything look perfect? The florists outdid themselves and the catering is absolutely divine. It's beautiful, Mom. You've outdone yourself with the planning. 30 years deserve something special. She squeezed my arm. I'm so happy all my children are here to celebrate with us. She gestured toward the head table, where my older brother Daniel sat with his wife Carmen and their 2 perfectly groomed children. At 33, Daniel was everything my parents had hoped for in a firstborn: the successful structural engineer with the suburban house, the stable marriage, and the kind of predictable life trajectory that made parents proud at anniversary parties. Daniel looks so handsome in his new suit, Mom continued. And Carmen found the most adorable outfits for the kids. They're going to look perfect in the family photos. I nodded and smiled, playing my role as the supportive younger sister who was thrilled to be included in such an elegant family celebration. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Sweetie, maybe you should put that on silent, Mom suggested gently. We don't want any interruptions during the speeches. Of course, I agreed, reaching into my purse to silence the device. But as I pulled it out, I saw the caller ID, Forbes magazine. Interesting timing. Ladies and gentlemen. Dad's voice boomed across the ballroom as he tapped his champagne glass with a silver knife. If I could have your attention, please. The conversations gradually quieted as 60 guests turned toward the head table. Dad stood with obvious pride, looking out over the gathering of people who'd shared 3 decades of his married life. Margaret and I are overwhelmed by your presence here tonight, he began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to addressing groups. 30 years of marriage represents more than just time passing. It represents a partnership that's created something meaningful and lasting. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the ballroom. Mom dabbed at her eyes with her napkin, clearly moved by the moment. When Margaret and I got married in 1993, Dad continued, we had dreams about the life we wanted to build together. A home filled with love, children who would make us proud, and the kind of partnership that would stand the test of time. He gestured toward Mom with genuine affection. I can say with complete confidence that our dreams came true beyond anything we could have imagined. More applause. I found myself genuinely touched by the obvious love between my parents, even as my phone continued buzzing insistently in my purse. Margaret has been the perfect wife, the perfect mother, and the perfect partner in building the life we share today. She supported every challenge, celebrated every success, and turned our house into a home that's always been the center of our world. Dad's voice grew stronger as he warmed to his theme. But perhaps our greatest achievement hasn't been our marriage itself, but what that marriage produced, the next generation. He turned toward Daniel with unmistakable pride. Our son Daniel has exceeded every expectation we had as parents. A respected engineer, a devoted husband, a loving father to our grandchildren. He's built exactly the kind of life we hoped for when we first held him as a baby. Daniel stood briefly to acknowledge the applause, clearly enjoying his moment in the spotlight. Carmen beamed beside him, and their children waved to the crowd with rehearsed charm. When people ask Margaret and me about our proudest accomplishment, Dad continued, we don't hesitate to answer. We have one successful child who represents everything we tried to teach about hard work, responsibility, and building something meaningful with your life. The phrase hit the room with the weight of absolute conviction. One successful child. The implication hung in the air like expensive perfume, present, unmistakable and defining. I stood near the champagne fountain, smiling politely while my father publicly declared that my brother was their sole successful offspring. It wasn't malicious or intentionally cruel. It was simply Dad's honest assessment of how his children had turned out. Daniel had followed the prescribed path. College, engineering degree, corporate job, marriage, house, children, steady career advancement. The kind of traditional success that made sense to parents who'd built their own lives around conventional milestones and recognizable achievements. My phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. I glanced at the screen. Forbes magazine, third attempt. Daniel represents the best of what Margaret and I tried to instill in our children, Dad was saying. The importance of education, the value of hard work, the significance of building something stable and lasting. He raised his champagne glass toward my brother. To our son who's made us proud every single day, and who continues to be living proof that good parenting produces good results. The toast was echoed throughout the ballroom with genuine warmth. Daniel stood again to acknowledge the honor, clearly moved by his father's public praise. That's when my phone rang. Not buzzed. Rang. Loudly enough that several people at nearby tables turned to look at me with mild disapproval. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, fumbling to silence it. But as I looked at the screen, I realized this was probably not a call I wanted to miss. Forbes magazine doesn't typically call people repeatedly on Thursday evenings unless something significant was happening. I slipped quietly toward the ballroom side entrance, intending to step into the hallway and quickly handle whatever this was about. "Alexandra." Dad's voice carried across the room. "Everything all right?" 60 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I was trapped halfway between the champagne fountain and the exit, phone in hand, clearly interrupting the most important moment of my parents' anniversary celebration. "Sorry, Dad. I was just going to take this quickly in the hallway." "Actually," he said with that indulgent smile he used when tolerating minor disruptions, "why don't you just let it go to voicemail? We're in the middle of something important here." The phone stopped ringing, then immediately started again. "Forbes magazine. Fourth attempt." "It might be work-related," I said apologetically. "I should probably just check what they need." Dad's expression shifted slightly. I could see him calculating whether this was worth making an issue over, given the audience and the occasion. "All right," he said with forced patience. "But please make it quick. We're about to continue the toasts." I answered the call, planning to quickly explain that I was at a family event and would call back later. "Hello. Alexandra Chin. Congratulations. This is Jennifer Walsh from Forbes magazine. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time, but I couldn't wait until tomorrow to share this news." Her voice was enthusiastic and professional, carrying clearly in the ballroom's acoustics. "Actually," I said quietly, "I'm at a family celebration right now. Could I call you back?" "Of course, but I just wanted to be the first to congratulate you on making our 30 under 30-foot billionaire list. The article goes live tomorrow morning and we're so excited to feature your story." The words 30 under 30 billionaire list carried across the ballroom with perfect clarity. I could feel the energy in the room shift. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses paused halfway to lips. 60 people suddenly focused their complete attention on my phone conversation. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" I asked, though I'd heard her perfectly. "Forbes 30 under 30-foot list. You're being recognized as one of America's youngest billionaires. Your biotech company's IPO last month officially put your net worth at $2.1 billion. You're the youngest woman ever to achieve billionaire status through pharmaceutical innovation." The silence in the ballroom was so complete I could hear the ice melting in the champagne fountain. Dad was staring at me like I might be speaking in tongues. Mom had gone very pale. Daniel's champagne glass was frozen halfway to his mouth. "Could you hold on just a moment?" I asked Jennifer. "Of course." I looked around the ballroom at 60 faces staring at me with expressions ranging from confusion to shock to dawning comprehension. "Actually," I said, making a decision that would change everything, "would you mind if I put you on speaker? My family is here and I think they might want to hear this." "That sounds wonderful. I love sharing good news with families." I pressed the speaker button and Jennifer's voice filled the ballroom with professional enthusiasm. Alexandra, I was just explaining that you've been selected for our 30 under 30 billionaire list. Your work in developing breakthrough treatments for autoimmune disorders has revolutionized the pharmaceutical industry, and your company's recent IPO has made you one of the youngest self-made billionaires in American history. You could have heard a pin drop. The article focuses on how you built Phoenix Therapeutics from a startup in your apartment to a $15 billion company in just 5 years. Our readers are going to be fascinated by your story, the MIT PhD, the breakthrough research, the way you turned down acquisition offers to maintain control of your patents. Dad was looking around the ballroom like he might be having some kind of medical episode. We're particularly excited to highlight how you've maintained your focus on patients over profits, Jennifer continued. Making your treatments available at cost to developing nations while still building a sustainable business model. That's exactly the kind of innovation leadership our readers want to hear about. Mom had sunk into the nearest chair. So once again, congratulations. The photographer will be in touch about scheduling your cover shoot, and we'll need to coordinate the interview for the full feature article. Cover shoot? I asked. Oh yes. You're our cover story for the September issue. The billion-dollar breakthrough, how Alexandra Chen is revolutionizing medicine. Daniel made a sound like air escaping from a tire. Thank you so much for the recognition, Jennifer. I'm truly honored. You should be. What you've accomplished at 28 is absolutely extraordinary. We'll be in touch soon about the details. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my purse. The ballroom remained in complete silence. Finally, Dad found his voice. Alexandra. Was that really Forbes magazine? It was. And they said you're a billionaire? They did. With AB. With AB. Mom was staring at me like I might be an alien from another planet. But you work in, what do you do again? I develop pharmaceutical treatments for autoimmune disorders. Phoenix Therapeutics is my company. We went public last month. Your company? Daniel finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. I founded it 5 years ago after completing my PhD research on targeted immunotherapy. We've developed treatments for rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, and multiple sclerosis that are significantly more effective than existing options. Dad was looking around the ballroom at his guests, all of whom were still staring at our family with obvious fascination. Alexandra, he said carefully, are you saying you're actually successful? I'm saying I've built a pharmaceutical company that's helping millions of patients while generating substantial returns for investors and employees. But you live in that small apartment downtown. I live in a downtown loft that's convenient to my research facility. I converted the ground floor into laboratory space and live upstairs. It's efficient. And that old car you drive. My Honda Civic is reliable and environmentally responsible. I don't need a status symbol. I need transportation. Mom finally found her voice. The Forbes cover story will be on newsstands next month, apparently. Uncle Robert, who'd been sitting at table 3, stood up with obvious confusion. Alexandra, are we understanding this correctly? You're actually wealthy. I'm actually successful at developing treatments that help people manage chronic illnesses while building a sustainable business around pharmaceutical innovation. But earlier tonight, Dad said slowly, when I said we had one successful child, you said what you believed to be true based on the information you had. Information I had? Every time I tried to share news about breakthrough research or successful clinical trials or patent approvals, you'd redirect the conversation to when I was going to get a real job, or settle down and start a family. The realization was dawning on faces throughout the ballroom. You tried to tell us about this? Mom asked. Remember Christmas when I mentioned the Phase 3 trial results? You told me to stop talking about work and focus on meeting someone nice. I thought you were talking about some laboratory experiment. I was talking about clinical trials that proved our lupus treatment was 40% more effective than the current standard of care. Those results led directly to our IPO. Daniel was staring at me with growing comprehension. All those times you mentioned research projects. I was talking about developing treatments that are currently helping 800,000 patients worldwide manage conditions that were previously debilitating. Dad slumped in his chair. We've been completely blind to your success. You've been looking for success that matched your expectations instead of seeing the success that was actually happening. I pulled an envelope from my purse and walked to the head table. Mom, Dad, I have something for you. Dad opened the envelope with shaking hands and stared at the contents. What is this? He asked. It's ownership papers for the lake house in New Hampshire. The one you've been dreaming about since I was in high school. Fully renovated, fully furnished, and legally transferred to both of you. Mom looked at the property deed through tears. Alexandra, this must have cost millions. It doesn't matter what it cost. What matters is that you have a place where you can be happy together. But after what I said tonight, declaring that Daniel was our only successful child. Dad, you said what you genuinely believed based on how you define success. I don't love you conditionally based on whether you understand my career achievements. I looked around the ballroom at 60 guests who were all staring at our family with obvious fascination. Besides, I continued, you were right about one thing tonight. You do have one successful child. Daniel looked up hopefully. You have two successful children, I corrected with a smile. Daniel's built exactly the kind of life that makes parents proud, stable, loving, traditional, and meaningful. My success looks different, but it's no more or less valuable than his. Dad stood up and walked around the table to hug me. I'm proud of you, Alexandra. Not because of the money or the recognition, but because you've spent 5 years developing treatments that help people while we were completely oblivious to your achievements. Thank you, Dad. Can we start over? Can you forgive parents who were so focused on conventional success that they missed the extraordinary success happening right in front of them? There's nothing to forgive. There's just moving forward with better understanding. Mom joined our hug, tears streaming down her face. My daughter is going to be on the cover of Forbes magazine. Your daughter has been trying to share her professional excitement with you for 5 years, I corrected gently. The magazine recognition is just external validation of work that's been meaningful all along. Daniel approached us with obvious emotion. Alexandra, I feel terrible. All those family dinners where Dad compared us, all those times I felt superior because I had the traditional career path. Daniel, you built something beautiful. A marriage, a family, a career that serves people and provides stability. That's genuinely successful, and I'm proud to be your sister. Even after Dad spent tonight declaring that I was the only successful child? Especially after that. Because now we get to celebrate both of our achievements instead of competing for parental approval. As the evening continued, I realized that the real victory wasn't being recognized by Forbes or achieving billionaire status before 30. It was finally having the chance to share my actual life with parents and family who could see me clearly. The Riverside Country Club's ballroom buzzed with new energy as guests processed what they'd witnessed. My parents' 30th anniversary had become the night their younger daughter was revealed to be one of the youngest billionaires in America. But more importantly, it became the night our family learned that success comes in many forms. Love shouldn't be conditional on recognition. And sometimes the most important revelations happen when Forbes magazine calls during anniversary toasts. Later that night, as I drove home in my reliable Honda Civic to my downtown loft where I'd conduct research that would help thousands of patients tomorrow, I reflected on how dramatically the evening had changed. I owned a pharmaceutical company worth billions, employed 1,200 people, and had developed treatments that improved lives worldwide. But the most valuable thing I owned wasn't visible on any balance sheet. It was a family relationship rebuilt on truth instead of assumptions, worth more than any Forbes recognition could ever be.